Good morning, Dave.
Hello.
Thanks for being with us. Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself and how you decided on a career in weather.
Well, first of all, I'm born and raised in Jamestown, North Dakota. I came from a family of 9. 6 boys, 3 girls, quite a big family. But other than that, I did not choose to be a weatherman. I was doing very well in radio. I had a morning radio show. I had all kinds of characters. I was having a lot of fun. We were just goofing off in the morning. I had very good ratings, and in fact, it was because of an extremely nice rating period that we went through and had improved the station's ratings on the morning show to a point that the managers were becoming interested. Who is this guy down there? And there was a party. They threw a party for us. It was a ratings party. And a gentleman that a lot of people wouldn't know his name right now, but back at this time, everybody knew his name. His name was Homer Lane. And Homer was the general manager and president of Channel 10. And he came to my table at this party and he said, "Have you ever thought of being a weatherman?" And I said, "No, why would you even think that?" And he said, "Well," he said, "you're very quick-witted," he said, "you're very personable," and he said, "you're funny." And I said, "Well, thank you for that." And he said, he said, I'm serious, I want you to be my weatherman." And I said, "Well, how do we do that?" And he said, "Well, why don't you show up at the studios next Saturday? I'll have a full crew there, and we'll just run a tape and see what you look like." And so I did that. I didn't know, because this was a party. Everybody had been drinking. We had all been having a pretty good time. And my wife and I went home and we said, "Do you really think there's going to be a crew there? I mean, really?" And we showed up, there was a full crew. And they weren't happy. They were working on a Saturday and they didn't know why. And here I come walking in, but they recognized me from the radio station, because it was a cool at that time was 2 radio stations and a TV station. And I worked for their FM radio station. And so they recognized who I was, but they didn't know what was going on. And but we all made friends because we did 5 takes, just like that. And they started calling me One Take Munsey, because they were going, "Okay, we're out of here." You know, we showed up, we did it, and so I made friends with everybody real quick because we weren't messing around. And within just a few months of doing those tapes, I was doing the 11 o'clock weather. I didn't have any training, didn't have any background in it whatsoever. Just jumped in there and said, "Let's go." And that's how it all started. The great thing in my career and in my life was that I worked with Homer for years after that, and knew him as a friend for years after that, and was able to tell him right up until just a few days before he died that I knew what he had done for me. I was always able to thank him over and over and over again for what he had done for my career. But it wasn't my idea, it was somebody else's idea.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow.
He used to sit, his grandkids told me at his funeral that he would sit and watch TV and they would all sit with him on the couch, and when I would come on he would say, "I discovered him, that's my protege." And that made me so proud, you know, that he would do that.
So you said you were from North Dakota.
North Dakota, yeah.
So is that where that all took? No, so in Arizona is where this all decided?
All of this took place in Arizona, yeah.
So when did you first move to Arizona? When did you first come to the Valley and start the radio station? And then what year was it when you...
Well, my coming to the Valley is very romantic. My girlfriend moved out here and got a job, and I followed her out here. And now my wife for 45 years. But yeah, it was, I had no intention of living here. It was just like the weather job. I was just following somebody. She had gotten a job here, and I came a month or so after she did. I came to join her. And so I looked for a radio job, finally hooked up with one, started in Casa Grande, and moved my way up into Phoenix. And for years in Casa Grande, I was a legend, because everybody would come to work at this little bitty station would go, "Dave Munsey used to work here. There's a chance. We can all hit the big time." And a few of them did.
So what year was it that you moved to Arizona?
I'm sorry?
What year, do you recall?
Yes, moved to Arizona 1973.
1973. And when did you make the big jump to big time Phoenix?
Well, yeah, I worked down there for a couple of years. In fact, I was actually going to move down there and become part of management of that station. And things just started to fall apart, so we started to look in other directions. It was about 1973 that I got a job at a radio station here in Phoenix, KUPD. And the guy that I replaced at KUPD had gone down to Cool. And he was working at their radio station at Cool. And he called me and said, would I be interested in a part-time job? Now, I have a full-time job. And they're offering me a part-time job. But they're offering me a part-time job at a place that has 2 radio stations and a TV station. Yeah, so I had to look at my future. My wife and I sat down and thought about it. I took the part-time job. Unfortunately for the guy that hired me, I ended up replacing him. I know, not a good deal, but that's what happens in this business. Started doing the morning show there and just met with all kinds of success. That's when Homer contacted me, and then I started doing. So
what year did you start getting on TV and doing
my start date? In fact, I don't even count my radio time, because on September 30th I would have been at Channel 10 42 years. But I actually worked there for 2 years in radio before I went on TV, or a year and a half, something like that. But I count my start time at Channel 10 as September 30th, 1975. Because that's when I started TV. And I was doing TV and radio. In fact, I was working for the TV station and both radio stations at that time.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I couldn't stop working. I just loved doing it. As soon as I started doing the 11 o'clock weather, I went in and said, can I do something on the 5 o'clock news as a reporter? And they said, you're getting up at 5 o'clock to do the morning show. I said, I don't care. I just want to do this. And so then they gave me a position on the 5 o'clock news, and it just started clicking, reporting weather. Then all of a sudden my weather duties changed. The TV station came to me and said, we want you full-time here, we don't want you on radio anymore. So we worked out a contract, and boom, now I was on. It was very sad to leave radio. I hated to leave radio, because radio is imagination. Television, they see everything you're doing, so you can't have fun with them. But in radio, whatever you want, whatever you can dream up.
Very.
Yeah.
So what do you remember from your early days in broadcasting with regard to drownings in the state of Arizona?
Nobody knew about it. Nobody was paying any attention. When my friend's son died, Timmy, that happened in Minnesota. That happened at a lake in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. And so I wanted to get involved just putting a message out. I intended to just put a message out a couple of times, because I wanted to warn people about the fact that water was dangerous, and if their kids fell into it, all Timmy did was fall in. He fell into a wave. He wasn't swimming. He wasn't even dressed for swimming. He fell into a wave standing on the shore of a lake. So I wanted people to know how dangerous water was, and I just wanted to do a couple of stories. And as I started researching the drowning deaths in Arizona, I went to our engineering department that keeps tapes. It's tape storage. And I said, I need some drowning tapes. I'm doing a story. Do we have any? We don't keep them in here. I said, why not? There's too many of them. We keep them in a separate room. So he took me down to this room, shelves of drowning incidents. I was going, what? What's going on here? And so all of a sudden now I'm starting to think, well, how many kids are drowning that they have a shelf full of drowning tapes? So what I did was I unannounced, I walked over, because the main station for the fire department was right behind Channel 10. So I just walked over one afternoon and I went to their PIO department, and there was a guy sitting in there. His name was Steve Jensen. And I walked in and he recognized me, and he went, well, hi, what are you doing here? And I said, do we have a drowning problem in Phoenix? And Steve stopped, and he kind of went back a little bit, and he went, I've been waiting for you. And that's what started it. So my next question was actually about recalling the number of drownings
being alarmingly high. And were they not being were they not being covered? Were they not being reported? They were, just nobody was.
Just wasn't clicking. You know, it's sort of like a serial killer. You have this here, you have this here, you have this here, you have this here, and pretty soon somebody goes, what's going on here? And that's kind of what was happening, but it wasn't happening. All of a sudden, I realized that this was going on and nobody knew it. Nobody was paying much attention to it. Steve Jensen knew, but he didn't know what to do about it.
Do you recall the year that you posed that?
Absolutely,
question?
1980.
1980.
Yeah, I could probably think of the day and the date and the time as well, but I mean, it was a real eye-opener to me because all of a sudden, we had a situation, Steve and I, and we became partners like that day, that instant. We became partners. And I started giving my message on the air almost immediately. Watch your kids around water. And that was a phrase I came up with in my kitchen. I was trying to think, how do I say this? What do I say? And the first phrase I came up with was, watch kids around water. And then I thought, I want it to be more personal than that. Watch your kids around water. I want to lay it right on you. Watch your kids around water. And that's really the way I meant it. I meant to get in their face. And I was easing into it, you know, but I wanted to be in their face. And I did get in people's face because I got hate mail. I got a lot of hate mail, and it surprised me. It really surprised me. People who would be angry with me because they said they watch their kids. And why are you telling me? You're insulting me by saying I don't. And I contacted every piece of hate mail that I got and talked them out of it. A lot of them were from family members of children that drowned. So I understood why they were angry. Because they thought I was an ambulance chaser. They thought I was making money off of it. And, but we talked. I told them I didn't make any money. And I turned all of them to my side. All of them understood. But I never let a moment go by where someone criticized me that I didn't go back to them. And I didn't go back to them and fight with them. I went back to them to explain what I was doing. But I was shocked when I got hate mail. Yeah, I was real shocked. But the other side of it is so many people jumped on board. So many people wanted to help. All of a sudden, you know, nobody went to the sales department and said, I want to buy into your water safety program. They all called me and said, I want to be in your water. And I took them to the sales department. I'll tell you a little story about the sales department. Years ago, when I first started the program, I didn't know how things worked. And I needed money, I needed stuff, I needed to do this program. And I was all alone. Nobody at the station was supporting me. Nobody even knew about it. In fact, they kept saying to me, why are you saying that? Why do you keep saying that? You say that after every newscast. And I would just say, well, a friend of mine's child died. Well, isn't that over by now? The mourning period done? And I just continued to say it. So there was a grocery store. It no longer exists. But it was a chain. It was in my neighborhood. And I stopped the manager one day and I said, do you have a budget that give money out to help causes? And he said, yes, we do. So I told him what I was doing. That afternoon, he took me up to his office, wrote me out a check for $5,000. I took that check to the station and they freaked out. This was a long time ago. They freaked out. They said, you can't do that. That has to go through the sales department. You can't just go out and... So I said, okay, so I gave them the check. And they took it to the sales department, and when it got back to me, it was $3,000. So I thought, well, I'm not going to do that again. But that's the way it works. You had to do that. Everybody had to be taken care of along the way. And to have what I wanted, to have my stickers, to have my coloring books, to have these things, I just went, okay, whatever, you know. Somebody wants to donate $100,000 and I get 75, I'll take that, you know. But I really tried to emphasize during my entire 37 years of water safety that I never took a nickel. I was offered all kinds of money, but I never took a nickel. Because I thought if I took money, even $1, that didn't have meaning, it lost its meaning. So we never ever made any money off of it. People did, but I didn't.
That's really good to know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was glad people did make money off it because it kept me going. I mean, let's face it, money makes the world go around. And television time is expensive. And if they wanted to use that time, they just can't give it all away. So as they were selling these things, and I was selling them, I mean, I was going with them, I was doing the close on the sales. As they were selling these things, I was happy because they were happy. And I was getting what I wanted as well. Yeah.
Do you recall any talk or coverage of laws being implemented or anything done about the number of drownings?
I think that you folks were the ones that really made stuff like that happen. The Drowning Prevention Coalition were the ones that really started hammering hard on those laws. People resisted those laws. You know, when I told you about hate mail that I got, a lot of it was on fencing. A lot of it was on fencing because people didn't want to be told they had to put a fence in their backyard. I didn't necessarily agree with telling people that they had to have a fence in their backyard. I didn't necessarily agree with it being a law. I didn't fight it when it happened. I thought it was a good idea. What I thought is that you should not sell a swimming pool without a fence. That will make it part of the deal. A fencing company and a pool company should be in cahoots together. That should have been the law. You can't sell a pool without a fence. Then you don't have to worry about telling people that have been a fencing law. You're basically doing that anyway. That was the way I would have liked to see things go down. And besides, they grandfathered in pools all over the city that didn't have fences. I mean, it was kind of a hack-baked law in a lot of ways because of the fact that you had so many pools that had already been built. And then they said, well, if you got a pool that's this many years old, you don't need to put a fence. And then every community came up with their own rule, their own regulation, to where it was like fireworks. You're hard to know where you can blow them off and where you can't. But it was the same with pools. You know, did you need it or didn't you? My position was, let me educate you on that. Let me tell you that you need a pool fence. Let me tell you that if you can afford a pool, you can afford a fence. You know, that's what my idea was, not you have to do this. I mean, I did say you have to do this, but I'm not going to force you to do it. You know, but the laws came, people fought the laws. The station tried to get me involved in fighting for the laws. They wanted me to go down and speak to some city councils and things. I backed off on that because somebody else was already doing it. And I was having enough trouble getting my message across. I never changed my message. People asked me to do this, people asked me to do that. Can we partner with this? And I kept saying, I have a message, it's a real simple one. Watch your kids around water. If you watch them, they're not going to drown. I had a mother call me one time and she said, I want to talk to you. Can you come to my home? So I went out to her home and we got out of the pool. She took me out to the pool and she said, I took my 3-year-old and I sat her on the step right here. And then I was vacuuming the pool and I was watching her. And I was vacuuming the pool and I was watching her. And then all of a sudden, I got into a little daydream about something, and I'm vacuuming, and here she comes floating on the bottom of the pool. And she said, I damn near vacuumed her up. And she said, I know what you mean now, by watch your kids around water. You mean like always. And I said, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a pretty simple, it really is a pretty simple message. Watch your kids around water, you know. Yeah, it's a tough one, and you know, I have never in my life been critical, no matter what the situation, of the parents. In my car, alone, driving down the street, hearing on the radio about a drowning, I go ballistic. I go ballistic. Have you not heard my message? You know, how in the hell did this kid die today? How did this happen? I've been telling you for how many years, how many times a day? You can't miss it. But when I'm with people that have lost children and when I'm in public situations, I'm very understanding of it because kids get away. When I speak, I always say, we don't put kids in jail because they would get out. It has nothing to do with age. Stick them in there, come back in a half an hour, they're gone. because that's all they do. They sit around and they plan. They're smart. We never ever said, this dumb little guy drowned in a pool. How stupid. No, that little guy found his way into a locked pool. That's not dumb. That's smart. And that's what they do. We found out a lot about kids too. First thing I found out about kids is their attention span is 7.5 minutes. So when I talked to schools, that was it. I would come in and the teachers go, here I go, 45 minutes, nothing to do. 7.5 minutes, I'm going, bye, see ya. And they're going, what? I said, that's it. Look at them, they're already fidgeting. So I had a very simple message, and it was like, it was quick, it was fast, it was to the point. I would be there for, goofing off with them for a little longer than 7.5 minutes. But the other thing I learned about kids is, no matter what age they are, I don't care if they're 6 months old, they store information. They take information that they don't share with you. They find a broken gate. I'm going to wait until mom and dad aren't here because they always stop me from going in there. I can't get through there. We had a kid that we found out, one of our little drown victims, we found out from going back in time that he knew about the broken gate for 3 days. Held that information. One day mom's in the kitchen, dad's doing something in the front, and he went in the pool and drowned. We had one situation where this little guy went and got the window, took a screwdriver and opened the window in his bedroom and went out to the pool. Oh, God, this is so great. Went back and got his sister. They both drowned, lost them both. All they want to do is get back where they had the most fun they ever had. And that was the last time they were in the pool. That's what they're going back for. And keeping them out is hard. So that's why I'm not critical. I realize kids get away. Privately, I'm very critical. But these parents are suffering enough. They're suffering so much. Now I realize that some of this has led to crime. I realize that some of these have not been accidents. I realize that all of them have to be investigated. And to tell you the truth, I'm getting a little short with my kindness as far as losing them. The message has been out there too long. The prevention techniques have been around for too long. We shouldn't be losing any children. We shouldn't be losing any children. Yeah. So I get a little more mad than I used to when we lose them now. But once again, I'm still I'm still good with the parents. No matter what happened, I know that they're suffering deeply. For a while, it happened by accident. I was in the elevator at St. Joseph's Hospital. I had been doing something else. And when I got to the bottom floor, I stepped out and there was a family of a drowned victim standing there. And they were going up to the room. And the mother and father weren't there. They were in the room. The grandpa, the grandma, and the brothers and sisters were there. And they said, would you come up to the room with us? It would mean so much to them. I thought, my grandpa and grandma got the kids here. How bad could this be? So we go to the room, and this child was dying. And the mother wanted me to touch him. She wanted me to lay hands on him. I wouldn't do it. I kept thinking to myself, if I touch this kid and he stirs and comes, I really did. I just kept thinking, who does she think I am? But as I told one person, I said, I think she thought I was Christ because she kept saying, touch him, touch him. And I just avoided that. I avoided doing that because I didn't want to have something happen like that. It was like all these things are going through my head. But he passed while I was there. And this family couldn't have been more pleased that I was there. And so I thought, I'm going to do this now. This is going to be part of my program. I'm going to come and visit these families in the hospital. And I did, but not for very long. I just couldn't keep up with it. It was way too hard. And that's where I got my empathy with the families. I became one of them. And I knew their pain, not their entire pain, but I was there, I was in the room. And so that's where I got my empathy. So no matter how bad the situation is, I know how bad the parents are hurting. It keeps me going. It keeps me going.
Obviously, you've shared a few stories with us about, ones that you remember. Was there one besides Timmy, your friend's child? Is it Tim or Tim?
Tim. Timmy. Was Timmy then, it'd be Tim now.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That was probably the most impactful for you?
Well, there have been a few. Timmy, of course, was very impactful for me. There was one incident where I took a crew of 5 to a home. It was a near drowning victim, which are the worst. I once had an emergency room nurse tell me, and she wasn't being smart, she was telling me. She said, if I walked in my backyard and I saw a kid floating in my pool, she said I'd walk inside and watch a TV program before I dialed 911. That's how bad near-drown victims are. And she was trying to tell me how bad. She wasn't trying to be heartless or cruel. She was trying to tell me how bad it was. So we went to this home of this near-drowning victim, and the mother and father were there. And we interviewed the mother. I always interviewed the mother. Fathers never talk. Never interviewed a father in my life. Fathers do not talk about this. There are a few now, and you know that through the coalition. But when I started this, dads they'd been ripped of their masculinity. They had not protected their child, and they didn't want to talk about it. So I talked to the mother. This child had to be ventilated every couple of minutes. And so they had to take a suction cup and they had to suck things out of his throat. He was in one of these chairs that does everything for him. And he was there, but he wasn't really there. And so we did the interview, and we all went home. Went back to the station, did our jobs. There was a producer, there was a photographer, there was a live truck driver, and there was myself. And then there was just an intern that was along, so there were 5 people there. The next day I was as sick as a dog. I didn't have any symptoms of being sick the day before or the night before, but the next morning I woke up. I was so sick that I couldn't. I have the least amount of sick days of anybody at the station in the history of the station. And I called in sick. I got to work the next day after being sick, and I found out that the other 4 members of the crew had called in sick as well. And I thought, wow, what an impact from being in that room with that child. What an impact. And now, think of the parents that live with that every day. See, and it's stuff like that that just really, really, really strengthens your resolve to not stop doing this. Those are everyday stories of everyday people. Those people live, they have a house. They drive a car, they go to the grocery store. They live every day just like you and I do. Only when they go home, there's a little kid there on a ventilator. It's horrible.
Just need a moment.
I know, I need a moment all the time.
So we talked a little bit about the story of your famous tagline. Can you just give us a little bit more behind how you knew the family of Timmy and his story and that very first time that you uttered, and remember to watch your kids around water?
Well, it's kind of really a cute little story as far as the watch your kids around water. Do you remember growing up, and maybe even in your own home now, and I'll never understand how this happens. How does jelly get outside the jar and on the bottom so that it leaves a ring when you leave it somewhere? But you pick the jelly up and there's a ring down there. I'm going, how does that, are we so sloppy that there was a jelly ring on a piece of paper on my kitchen table. I remember this as it's happening right now. And I looked at that little ring, and I had been struggling with something to say. I didn't know the phrase I wanted to use. And I drew a wavy line in the middle of it. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I wasn't even thinking. And on the top of the wavy line I wrote, watch your kids. And on the bottom of it I wrote, around water. And that's what happened. That's what started. I said to my wife, I said, I think I have the phrase. And I wasn't intending to use it as a lifelong phrase. I wanted something for a story. But it was so personal to me that I wanted things to be right. So I was thinking about this phrase I wanted to use. I wanted something to get people's attention and to push them forward on something I didn't know what. Watch your kids around water. It was perfect. And that's where it came from. I went to my sponsors and I said, I want stickers. Can you give me some of these stickers? Because stickers were very popular back then. And so this is 1980. And so we got the stickers. My sponsor got me stickers. And what I would do is I would take these stickers everywhere I went, and I would take one off of the wrapper and I would put it on the child, and then I would give them a couple. And I would say, take these, put them on the refrigerator, put them on anything you want at home. And so they would do that. And I'd give these stickers out everywhere I'd go. And parents would come up to me 10 years later, and they would say, I still have one of them damn stickers on my refrigerator. I had a standard line. I always said, you have a very good refrigerator. Refrigerator lasts 10 years, but the kids were doing exactly what I wanted them to do. They were putting something on that was very difficult to get off, and it stayed there. And I always said refrigerator. I always put that in your refrigerator when you get home. They get home and pat that on their refrigerator for Uncle Dave, you know. And so that was kind of, you know, and then from there, that's where the coloring books came from. We then said, okay, we need to take this program. That's when we decided we needed to go to the kids. We were going to the adults. They weren't listening. So after a year in the program, that's where the stickers came from. We said, let's take it to the kids and see if the kids listen to us. And I say us, it was my wife and I. And so that's where the stickers came from, and that was one of my sponsors took it. Then we got Bashes on as a sponsor. They had a printing press. So that's where the coloring books came from. I'm a published author. I have 4 books out. They're all coloring books, but they're 4 different ones. And each one of them has a different message in it. We tried to split the message up a little bit as we published them. And the reason that we published 4 is we kept running out. We would publish 200,000 of them, and we'd be out in a month or 2. That's how hard I was working, how much I was going around. I went to any event, I went to anything, anywhere. I didn't care how big the gathering was. I went to Intel. Intel had a water safety day. They had 2 rooms set up. One room was to have lunch and not be bothered. The other one was to have lunch and listen to a water safety speech by Dave Munsey. One person came. And there we sat, this person and I, and the people from Intel came in and said, no problem, we'll cancel. I said, no. I asked the guy, I said, do you want to hear it? And he said, I do. I said, okay. I did the speech for one guy. And I was always really proud of that moment, because I look back on that moment and I went, I'm pretty dedicated to this. I literally did. And it's really hard when you tell a joke to an audience of 1, because, you know, if you tell an audience joke to 50 people, maybe 30 of them are going to laugh. But 1, if he doesn't get it, you're dead. But he got most of them, so it was a pretty good deal. But yeah, I mean, I would speak to 10,000. I would speak to 1. It didn't make any difference to me. I was ready to go at any time. So yeah, and that was the thing. That's why we gave away so many coloring books. But also, I would go to fire departments all over. Wherever I would drive past the fire department, I had boxes of these things in my car. And I would stop and I would give the firemen. I'd say, here's a box of my coloring books. Hand them out to kids wherever you are, whatever's going on. So that was another way that we got distribution out. My wife would have a garage sale. I would stand at the garage sale and hand out coloring books. Channel 12 started a Super Saver Saturday. And it was CPR at the Phoenix Convention Center. I took my coloring books down there and I sat out on the front steps and I handed out my books, and they came out and said, you have to leave. You can't be out here. And I moved 50 feet down to where they couldn't bother me, and I gave them out again. And everybody that went into the Channel 12 Super Saturday Saver had a coloring book from Dave Munsey in their hand. So I never missed an opportunity. If there was a crowd, I went there. Drove my wife crazy because I was giving up all my weekends. But she understood why I was doing it. But this was her friend before it was my friend. I met these people through her. This was her childhood friend that she grew up with. So she was okay with the fact that I was doing this. 2 days after I retired. First of all, I was overwhelmed when I retired, because when I retired, I had the first knowledge of how successful not only my career, but my water safety program had been. Hundreds of thousands of responses on all these different websites. Our tech people estimated at over 1 million responses. 99% had the words, watch your kids around water. 99%. They didn't get it wrong. They got it right. And I said, they're listening. They get it. They heard me. And that's what when I go to places like the Coalition, I want to say to people, they're listening. They're listening to us. Because look at these responses. They all knew exactly what I was saying. Drownings were down a little bit over the years that we did that. And they got it. They knew that phrase. Nobody got it wrong. Children should be watched around water. Make sure you watch your kids around water. Everybody got the phrase right. And I was just overwhelmed with it. But 2 days after I retired, my phone rang. And I picked it up, and it was Debbie and Mitch, Timmy's mom and dad. Debbie said, David, Timmy did not die in vain. Timmy did not die in vain. And that's a message that I would pass along to anybody working in water safety. If you have a personal loss, that person, that child, that friend, that whatever, daughter, son, cousin, did not die in vain because of what you're doing. And when she said that to me, that was my reward. I never took anything, 37 years, and that was my reward. And that was a damn good one. So that's why I did it, that's why I do it.
We thank you. We thank you very much.
What a lovely Saturday.
You're answering all these questions for me. It's great.
I know, it's something, isn't it? Oh my goodness. That's why we ask you to watch your kids, because we don't want to be sitting around here crying all the time. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Ah, thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
Pause, breathe.
Yeah, I know. It's very emotional stuff. We're talking about losing children here. You know, it's very emotional stuff, and it's not a TV show. You know, it's real. And these kids are real, and they really die, and they really have funerals for them. It's real stuff. They never come back. You never see the smile. You never hear them say daddy. You never hear them say mommy. They're gone. They're gone. They don't come back. I once had a very wealthy man who had lost a child say to me, he said, you know something, Dave? He said, there's no amount of praying, there's no amount of crying, and there's no amount of money that will ever bring them back. And I thought, boy, that pretty much nails it. Because when they're gone, they're gone.
So at what point did you think of yourself as a water safety advocate? When did you actually label yourself as?
I never thought of myself as a water safety advocate. Never. I never ever applied that phrase to myself. I always thought of myself as Dave Munsey, a guy who had a friend's child die in a water incident, and I wanted to do something about it. When I retired, I looked at my website, I looked at the responses, and I said, I'm a water safety expert. I said, I was looking at I was standing at my desk, and my computer was on, and my computer was rolling through responses. And it was just rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling. And I was standing there, and I was kind of wiping tears out of my eyes. And all of a sudden I looked over, and my boss was standing next to me. And I said, I think I made an impact. He said, you made a frickin' dent. A great big dent. And that was a nice compliment. That was a very nice compliment.
That leads me into actually my next question is, do you feel as though we've moved the needle? Is it being, or do you feel as though the needle is being moved with regard to drowning prevention, water safety education, state laws?
When I started water safety, it was me. I was the only guy there. It was very lonely. Nobody understood. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted me to give that message. They wanted me to shut up. They thought I was scaring people. And I got threatened a few times with my position. We don't want that. We don't want you saying that. And I actually had to go to higher ups for help, for protection. And stuff like that didn't last very long. But it was very, very lonely out there. And it was very, very hard to continue. And then I met Steve Jensen. And then I had a partner. And then it was Steve and I against the world. And we just kept plowing forward and plowing forward. And then one of the parents of one of the drowned children started an organization. And then other people joined that organization, and then we had them. And then something else happened, and another parent started something. And then something happened, and then we had the Drowning Prevention Coalition. And then something else happened, and we had the Water Watchers. And then something else happened, and more and more people kept coming on board. And all of a sudden we had this community of people that felt like I did. We had an entire community of people that were as passionate as I was. And I could tell. I could sit down with somebody, I could meet somebody and shake hands with them, and in 5 minutes I knew how dedicated they were to what we were doing. And I'm sure you can too. Once you do this for a while, you know who's going to help and who's not. And all of a sudden it wasn't so lonely anymore. All of a sudden there were more people doing it. I spoke to the National Water Safety Coalition. I didn't even know they existed. And I spoke to them. They came here. They had a convention here. And after I was done speaking, someone got up and said, "Who the hell is this guy? How come we never knew about him?" It was because I wasn't looking for publicity. I was looking for save children's lives. And I ended up having a nice relationship with them. They gave me one of their big awards finally down the line. And I was so glad they were there. I didn't know there was a national organization. But there are. And it's no longer lonely out there. We have so many people now. Look at this. Look at the Y and I are connected. I'm going to be connected with more people as we go along here. And the Drowning Prevention Coalition, the work that you people do to get the message out and the information that's available to people. And that's what triggers my anger now when somebody drowns, because there's more than enough information, more than enough people that are trying to help with this situation. So yeah, in the beginning, like anything, bleak. You know, what did Bill Gates think when he was sitting in the garage trying to put together a computer? Well, probably the same thing I thought when I was writing inside a jelly stain. But that jelly stain turned out to be my career. Nobody ever walks up to me now and says, "How's the weather?" For the last 25 years, anybody that ever approached me said, "Watch your kids around water. Thanks for your water safety efforts." And so that became my career, that became my life. And it will continue to be.
So grateful. So what is your relationship with the Drowning Prevention Coalition of Arizona? Throughout the years, or what do you foresee it being in the future?
Well, of course, I was there when they were formed. I know a lot of their forming partners. I know a lot of the people that are in the Drowning Prevention Coalition have suffered personal losses. And so I know they're dedicated. I know that when they make a movement to do something, to educate you in one way, we're all like this. We're all in this undocumented territory where we didn't know where we were going or what we were doing. So when the Drowning Prevention Coalition tried something, I supported it, whether we thought it was going to work or not, because we didn't know. And it was this trial and error that we know now after all these years, what they listen to, what they don't listen to, how we can approach them. And it's this mindset of all coming together. One person alone can't get this job done. It takes this community that we've created in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'll tell you something, I have not been to water events or water safety places in other parts of the country, but I would guess that person to person, man to man, woman to woman, volunteer to volunteer, we have a better program statewide here than anywhere in the country. We are so aware, we are so dedicated, and the people here, not only are they dedicated to what they're doing, but they're dedicated to the memory of a loved one. And that makes it so much stronger. Those kids did not die in vain, just like Timmy.
I agree with you 100%.
Yep, thank you. I knew you would.
Do you feel like the work the Drowning Prevention Coalition of Arizona has been impactful?
You know, once again, these are not things that I really concern myself with. I mean, I wanted everybody to do well, and I wanted everybody to get the message out, but I wasn't like tracking how successful they were doing, and I wasn't, you know, what I would do is if I went to the water watchers out in Mesa or wherever they had it, and I saw every member of the Drowning Prevention Coalition there, I knew they were doing their job. I knew they were interested. I knew they were collecting information on how to make this work better. I knew that they were supporting Drew Ann and all those people out there that had that going. So I knew that, and I would not only see you there and other people there that were supporting this. I saw other groups there, like a wonderful group, which was a family that lost their child out at Canyon Lake. They took 3 days to find. Everybody walked away from them. So with their own money, their own efforts, they had to find their child on their own. And they finally found him after, I think it was 3 or 4 days. So they started an organization that if you lose your child, we'll stick with you until you find him. And the organization is called You're Not Alone. And I'm not sure if they're still together or not, but it was stuff like that that just warmed my heart. I would just say, this child that died at Canyon Lake, in his memory, these other families, you know, I mean, think of what that's like. Even, especially if you don't have money. This family they were fairly wealthy. But think if you're out there and your child's at the bottom of the lake and all of the departments that do this sort of thing have said, yeah, we can't find him. We'll just have to wait for him to show up someday. I mean, really, what would that be like? These people say, Well, they bring in the dogs from Utah that can smell the water and tell you. They bring in groups from California. They pay all expenses for all of this. I mean, that's tremendous. Stuff like that. Just one group. That's just one group. So is it working? Yeah, it's working. It's working. We still lose children. We still lose children. And I said this in a speech once, and 2 people walked out of my, and I knew who they were, and I contacted them. I said, and this was, I've been doing this 37 years. This was probably 32 years ago, maybe 35 years ago. I said, as long as we have children, and as long as we have water, we will have a drowning problem. We need to hit, and never stop, never stop, never stop. Children will always drown. They said at the end, when I contacted them, it was so negative. It was so negative. Can't you be positive over the fact that we can get a handle on this? And I said, no, I can't. We're not going to get a handle on this. As long as we have children and as long as we have water, they're going to drown in it. 25 years later, one of these people came back to me and said, you're right. I was wrong. I don't want to be negative. I want to be positive. And the positive thing is, watch your kids around water. I mean, that's it. If you do, then we won't have a negative. That's the thing. But we're not going to ever give up on that message. We're not ever going to stop saying that you should watch your kids. We're not ever going to stop saying that you should teach your kids to swim. We're not ever going to stop saying put a fence around the pool. We're not ever going to stop saying don't think that your kids are safe because they're at the neighbors. We're not ever going to stop saying learn CPR. You know, I have a little saying I made up about CPR. The day you learn CPR is not the most important day in your life. It's the most important day in somebody else's life.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's working. It's working. All these people together, we've created this little water safety community now, and I think we all agree that we can't stop. We can't stop. We are going to have to train another generation after us. You guys are the generation after me. And then there's going to have to be a generation after you that continues this message.
Agreed.
Just one
What?
sec. We're just gonna switch the battery.
Sure.
Yeah,
I won't need a guest speaker for the next 3 meetings.
there you go, there you go. Yeah, you've got it covered.
Ready? Okay, great.
And by the way, I do that kind of stuff. If
Do
you, yep.
Oh,
yep,
great.
Yep.
Excellent. Good
Yep.
to know. Thank you. So what more do you think could be done to help reduce the number of drownings that Arizona sees each year?
Oh boy, what more could be done? Well, much more could be done. I mean, you know, I speak about the coalition, I speak about the group, I speak about all these organizations that have been started, but we're very small. There are not many of us. So we need more volunteers. We need more people to come forward and say, I'll help with that. We need more parents to be aware of the dangers of water. And the dangers of water are not just swimming pools. They're lakes, they're rivers, they're buckets of water. We have one incident that a child was playing on the front lawn. Mom and dad were right there, they had a blanket. Child kind of crawled away from a little ways. There's nice grass there. Mom and dad were having a glass of wine, just enjoying the evening, and the baby came up to a sprinkler head. And the sprinkler head had grass growing in it, but it went down a ways. And in the bottom of that sprinkler head was about that much water. And the baby fell forward into it, and we didn't lose him, but he's been incapacitated ever since. And I believe now we have lost him, but I mean, I think he lived into his 20s. And it was just, I would see his mom pushing him in a wheelchair, kind of like a baby carriage, in his teens. And that's what happens. That's why the tragedy of near drownings is, just so horrible that you just don't want that to happen. I mean, you're so glad that they live, and then you wonder. Yeah.
So retirement looks good on you. So is this it? Are you riding off into the sunset, or is there something in the future for Dave Munsey related to water safety?
Well, actually, I have 2 jobs now. One of them is here at the Y, and they keep me pretty busy doing different things. We've been meeting a lot of their employees, meeting a lot of their members over the last couple of months as I've been getting started on this. But we also have shot some commercials for them. We have a lot of promotions going on Teach Your Kids to Swim. This is not a 3-month program for me. This is going to be, we're going to be here for a while, and we're going to help with a lot of different programs. We're going to help with programs on boating safety, or we're going to help with programs on safety on using life jackets and floating devices and things like that. We're going to be talking about learning CPR and family CPR. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to do with the Y. I'm also working with a company right now that is called Solar Safe Pool Covers, and the aspect with them, there's a lot of aspects that go along with covering your pool. There are money-saving aspects, water-saving aspects, cleaning aspects. The aspect I'm the most interested in is safety. And in the ad that I did for them, I added a phrase that I said had to be in the ad. And that was, I say, solar safe pool covers, when used properly, are the safest form of keeping your children out of the pool. But once again, I use the phrase, when used properly. If they're not snapped down right, if they're not on, it's like my wife said. My wife said, why would you have a fence if you had a pool cover? And I said, when the pool cover's off. And that's the one thing you forget about. I think that pool covers are absolutely, the way they're making them today, the safest thing that you can have on a pool. But when it's not on the pool, it's not on the pool. And that's the thing. So I encourage everything. Pool covers, fences, alarms, anything you want to put in there is okay with me. You want to hire a lifeguard 24/7 and you can afford it, do it. Good idea. So I'm not going anywhere. I actually, I have the word out to a couple of other organizations that I want to help them as well. I want to really dig in on water safety. I have so much time to do it now. I was very restricted over the last 37 years. Plus, I had an employer, and not necessarily getting on them, but employers have rules and regulations and time limits. I don't have that anymore. So I'm ready to rock.
We're thrilled to have you help us out at the Drowning Prevention Coalition of Arizona. We'll be definitely tapping into you as a resource. So we look forward to whatever may be with that.
Okay.
So what advice can you offer to Valley parents and families about being safer around water?
Well, watch your kids around water, number one. That's the best thing. I think just a total awareness. Water safety is a family thing. I always encourage families to have a family meeting on water safety. And if you think it's important, have it once a week, have it once a month, but have a little refresher on the fact that the pool, as much fun as it is, it's very, very dangerous. You know, the thing is it's kind of crazy. If you buy a hair blower, there will be something on the hair blower that says, do not use this in the shower. Please give me a break. But if you buy a swimming pool, they don't tell you it's dangerous. They don't say your kid could die in there. I take that back. They're doing it more and more now because of the coalition, because of people like all of us that are kind of pushing it onto them. And a lot of these pool builders, some of these pool builders are coming in as partners on the coalition as well, because they want to know about the safety aspects. They want to know what we're up to. But in general, the pool is dangerous. And you need to, as much fun as it is, you need to be aware of that as a family. And so that's why I encourage family meetings for that as well. Because your younger kids, your kids will keep you in line. Your kids will tell you when you're not watching them. Your kids will tell you when you did something that, Mom, I can't believe you went in there and answered the phone. Their kids will tell you that. We know that because the parents are telling us.
That's great. Any other words of wisdom?
Watch your kids around water.